I'm Dean Newlund, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. When she was just 9, Christine Marie Aitchison's lungs collapsed. Surrounded by what she remembers as thousands of angelic beings, she was told, "It's not your time. You belong here to bring light back into the world." That message has guided her ever since. Christine carried that vision into nursing, believing her mission was to heal. But as she saw patients offered quick prescriptions instead of deeper care, she asked herself, why are we trying to put a Band-Aid on problems instead of getting to the root cause? That question became her turning point. She left traditional medicine, traveled the world on a spiritual pilgrimage, and built a practice that helps people face grief, reconnect with their true selves, and uncover the wisdom already inside of them. This is a story about how the darkest moments in all of our lives can awaken the brightest light. This interview goes live November 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Christine, great to have you on the show, you fellow Oregonian, hailing from Portland, just down the street. You had mentioned that you started your wellness journey in nursing. Mm-hmm. And now you're in a different space. Tell us why you made this transition and what you're all about now.
Totally. Yeah. So I was a nurse for 6 years. I worked in inpatient rehab where I was supporting patients rehab themselves back to a baseline of functioning and being able to, do their everyday activities and all of that. And it was really rewarding and really nourishing. But about 2 years into my nursing career, I had you could call it a spiritual awakening, or what some call it a dark night of the soul moment, where I was essentially being forced to look at a lot of the trauma and grief that I was not tending to from an early age. And everything in my reality started to shift and kind of started to collapse. And I was going through, I could say, like a crisis moment. And I started to seek support from more holistic practitioners. And that included, like spiritual counseling, somatic-based work, homeopathy. I traveled to India and Nepal and Southeast Asia for 6 months on a spiritual pilgrimage to really start to learn more about who I was outside of the role that I was playing as a nurse. And so many truths were revealed to me. And one of them was in relation to a near-death experience that I had when I was 9 years old. And in that near-death experience, I was completely connected to other worldly or unseen angels and guides and guardians that told me it wasn't my time to go. It's my time to actually bring back light to the world, and that I was part of that mission. And so when I had my near-death experience and came back from it, I thought bringing my light into the world was nursing, because I was, tended to and supported by so many compassionate and empathetic nurses when I was in really fragile states. And so that's what I wanted to become. And then when I became a nurse, I realized the emotional tending that's needed to patients just was not a priority to, you could say, the larger system. What they wanted as a priority was let's give someone who feels depressed medication. Let's give someone who feels anxiety medication. That was always like the first line of defense. And that started to feel so wrong to me. Just like, why are we trying to sugarcoat or put a band-aid on the root problem instead of really getting to the nitty-gritty, to like the roots of why someone is having this experience? And while I was starting to unearth my roots of the things that I was struggling from and healing from the inside out, I could no longer not do that for the patients that I was starting to see. And there was a big dissonance there. So,
Fascinating.
yeah.
So would you be willing to share what was the impetus of this near-death experience? What caused it?
Well, so it's called a spontaneous pneumothorax, where my right lung collapsed, and essentially I couldn't breathe. And it was like, if all of a sudden, they would have waited 1 minute longer to open me up and do surgery on me, it would have been fatal. And the cause of the spontaneous pneumothorax, actually, the doctors don't know. That's why it's called spontaneous. It kind of just comes out of nowhere. And I had it
Wow.
7 more times. So I've had my right lung collapse 8 times total. I've had 6 chest tubes, my lower lobe of my lung taken out, all these different kinds of surgeries. And then, at the age of 14, it stopped collapsing, given the lobectomy that they did.
So
And
between the
yeah,
age of 9 and 14, you had 7 of these cardiac issues.
8. Mm-hmm.
8.
8 of them.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could go back to the first one, because I think here's where I'm going with this, Christina, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that there's an interesting experience that you have that most of us don't have, which is when we think about making major life changes, it sometimes comes in a whisper, doesn't come in
Mm-hmm.
a big fanfare. Um, Campbell would have talked about it in The Hero's Journey as the call. We got a call, I've got to listen to it. Sometimes big dramatic things do happen. We go through a divorce, we get in an illness or something. But there was something about, you said you had a near death experience. Do you have memory of that experience? Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember being near dead
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like what was that experience like? Did you have some sort of conversation? Did you have some sort of imagery that
Mm-hmm.
set you on this path of which you are still on?
Yeah. Yeah. So my near death experience wasn't, this is how I have seen it, wasn't like I died and then came back. It was like I almost died and then came back. And so it's a little different than what you would say, oh, every organ in my body stopped and I was unconscious for however long. I don't really know the actual scientific things that happened when I had my near death experience, but essentially um everything went dark, and all that I remember is being surrounded by like thousands of angelic beings, all different colors, pink, purple. I can see them now, blue, like all. And it was a telepathic connection where they were assuring me that I was okay. And it was like, it's not your time. You belong here. You need to go back to the earth side to bring essentially a transmission of light back into the world. And
And you're 9.
and I'm 9.
Had you ever had anything like that prior to this experience?
Well, since kind of reflecting back on my childhood, there have now been signs that there were beings and angelic figures around me, because I had a pretty tumultuous childhood, a lot of abuse and neglect and all that. And there was always
Oh,
a hint or a glimmer of them around. But it really wasn't until that near death experience and that recollection of that near death experience when I actually started to remember my connection to these guides.
I
which
see.
has been, yeah, a huge part of why I now am a holistic healer, because I use that connection to those sources as a way to receive guidance and input for doing healing work today.
It's yeah, this is just so fascinating to me. So my wife and I just came back from 2.5, almost 3 weeks of traveling through France, and I can't tell you how many churches we went to, and cathedrals and chateau, religious places, places of worship, places of extreme beauty, whereby the intention is that you come into this stained glass church, a cathedral, and you connect with God. You connect with something that's bigger than yourself. You connect with all it is. And without going down a whole religious conversation about needing the intercediary of pastors and popes and so forth to help you get there, that's not where I'm going with this. But we're creating a space for that, and I can feel it even myself. You go into it like, wow, this space changes my physiology, changes my breathing. I'm having a different kind of experience because of my external. You had something that came to you in a very different process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so unique. And probably I would never wish anybody the kind of experience that you had as a child, nor to have a near death experience to get to this awareness. But thank God you have that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's just such a gift. So, what then? So then you go into nursing, thinking that this is the way in which you're going to give light back to the earth
Mm-hmm.
through the healing of these people in a nursing, very traditional perspective. And obviously, the emotional component to healthcare in nursing is often seen as a different department, let alone the spiritual side of it, right? Um, so, what happened then? It sounds like you almost had a different experience where you went, wait a minute, um, I'm on the right, I had the right vision, but the wrong path to get there. Could you
Mm-hmm.
talk about that a little bit, and how this led you to where you are now?
Totally. Yeah. Well, the thing about me being on the wrong path, what's interesting is I don't actually see it as a wrong path. I believe that that path of nursing was part of reaching this higher remembrance or this higher calling, right? Because it was what I learned about being a nurse was what I learned about what I didn't want to do and what I actually wanted to do. And so I see it all as, a part of a greater vision that I was able to accept. But when I was in nursing, I was healing from a broken heart from a abusive relationship that I was participating in college, and
Mm,
I had kind of shoved a lot of that down because there's so much shame that I didn't want to
mm,
admit the intensity of how much that was affecting me. And so I shoved it down, I shoved it down, I shoved it down. And then all of a sudden, I just could no longer. Like it was just right in front of my face, turning up inside of my body, just in a way that showed as depression and self hatred and not wanting to live, and all these kind of like forms of extreme intensities that, the universe was trying to get my attention to. And so that
mm,
was kind of like my first descent into looking at, well, how did I even get to be a part of a abusive relationship in college? Like what led me there? And
mm.
then I started to process that with some really supportive resources. And within that uncovering, I remembered the abuse that I endured as a child. And one might think, like, oh, I
Oh,
think it was like 22 at this time. One might think, like, how did you not remember that? Well, it was like, one, I actually feel like I remembered some of it, but I labeled it as normal because that's what I thought happened to every child. That was my
mm,
own experience. I didn't know any different. And then two, I of course, dissociated and made excuses and justified it because it was too painful to even accept as the truth for me. And so
mm,
all of that was like, this is why you've been able to find yourself in an abusive relationship because that's what was normal for you. You didn't know any different. And that was a really big lesson and a big teaching for me. Yeah.
So my dog wanted to join this conversation, but she's not here anymore. Um, may I ask, this is very personal.
Mhm.
So do you have a relationship now
With,
outside of your spiritual relationship? Are you in a relationship with another person
oh,
now?
totally. I'm engaged to the most incredible person ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That
Yeah.
so all right, so now we're here in our timeline with you.
Hmm.
Tell us about what you do to help connect people to, if you want to call it their highest self or their spiritual side, the healing side. Tell us what that works like, and what does that form does it take? It's obviously not your typical nursing with Kaiser Permanente. It's something else. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I like to see my work with somebody as like a journey that we get to walk together and co-create and collaborate together. Um, and what I really love to empower my clients and my students that work with me is to really, instead of searching for the wisdom outside of themselves, is to like invite them to turn the mirror back on themselves to learn about the wisdom that lives with them. Because I
Hmm.
actually believe that we all have the antidote to the problem or the struggle or whatever it is that we're moving through, but we just haven't been able to like learn how to find it or discover it or unearth it. Because I believe a lot of us and the culture, especially in the Western world, have been taught to push down a lot of our intuitive knowings, push down our imagination, push down anything that's not considered normal, whatever normal is. And there's a lot that gets, I would say, distorted from our true self. And so it's really supporting the other person to explore what maybe those beliefs or distortions are that are keeping them separated from that true self, that higher self that always um, that is the remembrance of who it is that they truly are. And I do that through you could call it intuitive guidance. You could call it energy medicine. I use a couple of different modalities, but it's really, honestly, it's like the medicine of presence that I believe really helps bring forth the teaching and the healing and the wisdom that's wanting to be known.
So if I were to hire you,
Mm-hmm.
what would we do together?
Yeah. So we drop in together. We take probably a couple breaths, a grounding breath. And then I'd call in sacred space. So I'd call in all of our ancestors, our guides, those who are here in service for the highest good of you, the highest good of me, the highest good of the world. And then we'd start to ask the question, what's alive inside of you? What is maybe starting to surface that feels like it could be explored, whether that's a somatic feeling, something in the body, whether that's something that you feel emotionally. And then that kind of opens up um, the container for where we want to go with that. And so once that thing is unearthed, so let me just feel into, like, maybe it's something like um, you're afraid of sharing your fullest, truest expression because you have a history of maybe being bullied or being made fun of. And so we get to really be present with that past part that was hurt or harmed. And we go through a process of feeling deeply of that suppressed emotion. And then we call in perhaps the higher self that knows a deeper truth. And we get to support that past version with knowing the truth of who they are. Um,
Hmm.
and reprogramming that false belief system. That's
So
one
first
way.
question, Okay. The
Mhm.
first question you asked was, what is unearthing? What is it? You had a question to kind of start down a path of inquiry. What was that question again?
What is alive inside of you at
What is
this moment?
alive? So
Hmm.
what does that mean?
What is maybe what is the most present or pressing for you, right? If you're coming to me to have support, well, what is it? What's the thing that feels like it's causing you most angst or turmoil or discomfort in your day-to-day life, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual?
In the coaching world that I've been involved in for, 30 some odd years, I've noticed that most of the time people are not aware of what it is that's going on with them, that
Mm-hmm.
they have a symptom of something that might feel off, might feel like there's an opportunity, but they don't have clarity in terms of what it is. And
Totally.
that often the win, if you were to call it that, is the clarity. And then
Mm-hmm.
what might come from that is, all sorts of other things. Does this process help clarify what the it is?
Right.
And is it a
Yes. And so
spiritual? Are you co-creating with the person as well as the guides from my side of the fence as well as yours? Can you interject what you're sensing, even though I personally, in my cognitive prefrontal cortex brain, not know it, but I can sort of feel something, and you could put words to it?
totally. Yeah. I really like to give the client some space and time to see if they can get there themselves with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of, like teasing or pointing out some things that I'm feeling and noticing. But I really, and if they're really stuck, it's like, okay, this is what I'm sensing. This is what's downloading, in my psyche. Is this true? How does this land inside of you? I will ask the client that, but I really, really like to empower the client. Like that's my truest love is to support the client in unearthing what's inside of them, because if they know how to do it in a session with me, then they can take that and know how to do it outside of a session with me, because the goal isn't to like work with somebody for the rest
Mm.
of their life. It's to teach them how to do this work on their own and connect them with their allies and support team so that they have resources available to them outside of the sessions that we do.
And when you mean
Does that
allies
make
and
sense?
support team, you don't just, yes, when you mean allies and support team, you don't mean necessarily just physical beings on this planet. You're also
Mm-hmm.
talking about allies and support that might be more, whatever, spiritual, angelic, higher self,
Unseen. Mm-hmm.
soul, unseen. Okay.
Yeah.
Do
But
you
also
continue to
connecting.
have, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say also connecting them to use elements and connection with the earth, right? The plants, the trees as a form of remembering themselves, because we are bodies of the earth. And so I also teach that, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, that's all good. Okay. Do you continue to have a, call it, bad way of describing it, a relationship with these angelic beings that you had described when you first connected with them at the age of 9? Are they still present for you?
So I love this question because when I connected them with at the age of 9, I couldn't really fully understand what they were, and so I feel like from 9 to 21, I completely abandoned that connection. Although there always had
Hmm.
felt something around, but again, I just didn't have the words or the language to formulate that. And then it wasn't until I had my spiritual awakening when I realized, oh, this is what they are. This is they're a part of, they're a part of my world. And yes, I mean, every day I'm connecting to whether it's my angelic ancestors or spirit animals that are here to support me in clarifying or my life's purpose or whatever it is I'm needing support with. Like I'm surrounded by allies all of the time, and I believe we all are, but it's just getting to the conscious awareness, and raising, ourselves into a certain level of frequency that we can start to open up ourselves to meeting these guides that are always around but are just kind of knocking on our door trying to get our attention.
Are they here now?
Yes.
May I ask, what is their, are they giving you any information?
The information I'm feeling is a very somatic, so I feel like a lot of buzz here. I feel like behind my eyes, I could maybe cry a little bit of joy and like happiness that's happening behind my eyes.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, and actually, when we first dropped in together, like as soon as I saw you, I was like, "Oh, Dean and I have a spiritual connection." I felt that immediately when we dropped in together, and felt them
Hmm.
kind of come in and uh, validify that, if you would say, yeah.
Hmm. So, do we not all have spiritual connections with everybody, or is there variations? And if so, what's the spiritual connection that you and I have?
Well, I haven't like explored that, but I can
Well, let's
explore that right
explore
now.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have, connections with everybody, but I mean, have you ever sat in front of somebody and you're like, I'm assuming maybe like a partner or, a friend, and you're like, wow, there's just something, there's just like a vibrational match, but you can't really put words
Yes.
to it. Yeah, there's a
Yes.
flow of energy. And that's what I have the chills, and usually that's confirmation that to me like is telling me that is, yeah, what I'm sensing is confirmed. And that's what I felt
Yeah.
between you and I. And I'm not really sure, it's something that it's a feeling that I'm just sensing.
Yeah. Likewise. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find, since you're such a sensitive being, to the degree that you can have these sort of sets of awareness that you just described, is there, by being so open, the veil being so thin,
Mm-hmm.
one, is there negative energy? And if so, how do you create boundaries so that your sensitive being or sensitive soul doesn't get caught up in that?
Right. So when we connect to these other worlds or these other realms, it's all about our vibration. And so if I'm sitting inside of myself and feeling the vibration of love, of trust, of connection to my true essence, that's naturally going to attract the energies that are connected to that vibration, right? Everything's a vibration. So if we want to protect our energy from distorted or harmful energies, we have to do the work to clear that within ourselves. So if there's shame that I'm holding on to, or fear, or belief systems that are draining my life force versus uplifting or expanding me, that needs to be cleared, because as long as that is kind of, you could say, living inside of my body, inside of my energy field, then that can create, you could say, a vibrational match for those type of energies to be attracted to you. And so that's like the baseline. And then of course we all have stuff, we all have these, you could say, lower vibrational ways inside of ourselves that I believe that, can be cleansed and cleared. But on a day-to-day, because like I'm not perfect, I have not mastered all of this, I use things like calling on my support team to protect me from these negative forces. I use plant spirits as supportive tools, like rose, like mugwort, like sage, things that really cleanse and clear dense energy. And I make sure I try to be as grounded as possible when I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because so long as you are in the body, then nothing can essentially enter the body to like take shape. But if you are dissociating or not present, then there becomes, like, you could say, an empty hole or space
Hmm.
where negative energy, or you could say non-benevolent energy, can come in and like start to take shape. So those are the tools that I use and practice as far as energetic hygiene.
I've never heard that before. Energetic
Mm.
hygiene. It sounds like brushing my teeth. I'm going to brush my
Totally.
soul. This is good. I got a cavity. I got to take care of this. I
Totally.
love that phrase. That's good. So the reason I've had discussions about this before, maybe to some degree personally experienced with this before,
Mm-hmm.
whereby regardless of my own physical vibrational energy, that by being so open to my environment, whether it be the physical environment or spiritual environment, that there is the existence of the light to what you just described earlier on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And light exists because there's the contrast of darkness, right? There is both. Esther Hicks and the work that they've done talks about the whole manifestation and the law of attraction, and there's a lot of other experts in this field that describe that we attract that which we are. But there's also this idea from some perspectives, and I believe this as well, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Is that yes, we attract that which we are, but there's also energies that are not us that
Mm-hmm.
might want to become part of our space, into our existence, and that we need to set boundaries. Just saying, I am here to connect with these kind of energies, but if that doesn't seem to fit with who you are, energy source, wherever you might be, you're not welcome. I am
Mm-hmm.
not open to that.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, going back to my little trip with my wife down in France, with all these different wonderful cathedrals and churches and so forth, is that there were some that had different energies that we could feel it. And it wasn't that we were necessarily feeling down. It was just that the space had 500 years worth of oppression that we sort of went, whoa, this place doesn't feel like we want to do much here. Let's go to someplace else. And we would sometimes walk out of a church because of that energy.
Mm-hmm.
As woo woo as some might feel that is, it wasn't necessarily that we felt that we were attracting that. We were open
Mm-hmm.
to it, and therefore we needed to create some boundaries in that case by moving on. What's your take on that?
I feel like you really listen to your intuition, and feel like when you enter a space that you could sense, you could say, non-benevolent energies, what you don't want to do is drop into a state of fear, because then that's how they stick
Yes.
to you. Right. So it
Mm.
doesn't seem like you dropped into a state of fear. You dropped into a
Oh.
state of discernment. You're like, oh, this energy actually doesn't feel good. I'm going to walk away. And that's different, right? Than being like
Okay.
completely afraid and consumed by all the other things that might be, around you. And so, yeah, that absolutely, and that in and of itself is, I feel like, a way in which that you are able to protect your energy by leaving,
Semantic.
essentially.
Yeah. So semantics here, but I think it's an important concept that I think a lot of people deal with. Is there darkness? Is there evil?
Mm.
Or is it just simply the lack of light?
If I knew the full answer to this question, I probably wouldn't be on this path of seeking. Um,
Hmm.
you know, what I find really challenging about these kinds of questions is that I don't think all of it is so black and white.
Hmm.
Like the answer to a question like that, I don't think is so black and white. I think there's so much mystery that we don't know. And that, yeah, I mean, I'm here to learn and to explore. I believe that there is polarity. I believe in order to know the light, you must have the dark. And like, is there a way that, you know, somewhere along the way where that polarity begins to merge and there is no polarity? I don't know. I don't have the answer
Hmm.
to that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure.
If I go back into the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned when you were 9 years old and you had this experience and you were told, no, it's not time to leave. You have work to do, or you belong back on planet Earth, at least for now, to bring light back to the planet. Um, that's a pretty tall order for a 9-year-old
Yeah.
to hear. That's a big responsibility. Hi,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just supposed to, support your family and your new partner or relationships that you have. You're here to take on something that most of us don't consider, which is to bring
Mm-hmm.
light to the planet. That's huge. That's daunting. And it could also be a opportunity for great expansion. It also could feel an opportunity to trigger your worthiness to do so. Do I have the
Yeah.
ability to fulfill on this mission that I haven't necessarily chosen? I didn't write it down in some sort of workshop. It was brought to me. I didn't ask for it to come to me. It came to me, or at least not consciously. I didn't ask for it to come to me. I'm inserting words into your experience.
Mm-hmm.
How are you with that knowledge that that's what you were told? And how do you assess your ability to do that? How is it
Mm.
going?
Ooh, how is it going?
How is it
Well,
going? I'm not asking for a report
well.
card because that seems like a very
Mm-hmm.
inappropriate way to define this conversation. So I'm at a loss of words, but I just am struck by, so for me personally, I have always been fascinated by life purpose. My very first
Mm-hmm.
workshop was Discover Your Life Purpose back in, I don't know, 1995 or something. It's been a long time. Purpose is a big thing. And I realize it's not a noun, it's a verb, it's an action, it's a way of being. I get all that. But I've also asked myself questions around, what's the point? What's the reason? I'm really interested in understanding that. And my small little dot of time in this huge space of billions of years, the reason for being here is something that I think about. And so then when you have this experience where someone says, "Hey, we're going to tell you what your reason for being is. It's to bring light to the planet." I'm going like, what a great thing that you had. And I'm also just wondering how it gets to be manifest in a 9-year-old or however old you are now in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like, is this what you wanted? And how do you feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
doing? And is it, or do you feel like it's, you would rather do something else, but I've been told to do this? What's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I really, really appreciate this question because nobody has ever asked me this question before. So it's really great self inquiry. I do follow the belief that our souls chose, our parents to birth us into this world for a reason. Right, to
Hmm.
incarnate in a way in which that we learn the lessons that we're meant to learn and to bring forth, the remembrance of who we are every time we come back reincarnated. And so for me, I would say that it was a tall order, but it came with a lot of suffering. Like I came into this world
Hmm.
already through darkness.
Hmm.
I came in through darkness, with darkness, surrounded by darkness. And so it's really interesting, you could say, having this mission or this tall order to bring forth the light, because honestly, it feels like I kind of know what it's like to be at the bottom of hell and to
Hmm.
have reached those dark, dark places that now allows me to go there with the people that I serve and to hold them and to support them and to assure them that this isn't the end. This is just another um, way for you to come back healed and whole so that you may bring forth what you learned from that descent into the world. And so, how is it going? I mean, what my first priority that I always try to remember every day is how can I continue to do my own inner work, because for me that seems to be, as long as I continue to do my own inner work, then I can show up authentically and I can show up more present with those that I'm in service to. And I think it's really hard. It's really hard to meet yourself in a lot of those places. What I've been exploring is like a lot of places that were absent of love, and it's been a really beautiful, you could say, challenge to breathe light and love back into my bones, back into my body. And I think that's like, yeah, a huge level of self-compassion, self-love in a way that I don't think I really have acknowledged. So and something that has been really shown to me is that I have free will to choose how I want to bring the light into the world. Like if I want to do the healing work, I can do the healing work. If I want to share music, I can share it through music, through poetry, through any which way that, just at least as long as it's authentic and feeds my soul, then that's medicine, And so it actually is kind of like, can get a little confusing of like, well, how does it actually want to take shape now as I continue to change and grow and evolve. So we'll see.
So it's not just one way, it could be in many ways that you could be on your path.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're talking to some of your clients and you mentioned that you have gone to some pretty dark places, ergo that helps you with your clients because they might empathy, there's a familiarity, there's an empathy. How do you, and again, that sensitivity that you have towards larger spiritual realms, but also the sensitivity between you and other people, what do you do to not absorb what you are in the presence of? So
Mm-hmm.
that a really base way of saying this would be is, how do you prevent yourself from getting slimed?
Yeah. Well, when I was a nurse, I really had to learn that lesson really hard. I would come home with everyone's crap on to me, and I would be depressed and tired because I was not just processing my own stuff, but I was processing all of my patients' stuff. And so that was a really big moment of actually learning how sensitive I was, and how when sensitivity is not, you could say, when you're not aware of it, it can actually be a disservice to everybody involved. And so now for
Hmm.
me, what it has kind of, I can take a cleansing bath and go to the sauna and go for a walk, draw the energy down into the earth. Like there are practical tools, but really like the biggest tool that has helped me, that has naturally just allowed me to, you could say, wash away what's not mine, is really being honest with what am I responsible for. Because I think a lot
Hmm.
of us sensitive people grow up in a family system where they think that their parents and their siblings and the world, that like they're responsible for healing and helping and solving everyone's problems. And that becomes a distortion. It becomes a way in which that they distract themselves from not looking at their own stuff, and they can become swallowed by that. And so, yeah, a huge part of my learning and lesson of this work is like, I can't do this work if I don't know what I'm responsible for. And by, you could say, exploring that and healing a lot of the distortions around that, naturally it just feels like I hit a level where like it doesn't hang on to me as much as it used to with everyone else's stuff, because I know that's not mine to
Hmm.
hold.
I relate. I remember years ago having a fair number of physician clients at healthcare organizations and would be asked to go to their office, and I'd have to walk through the halls and walk by patients on gurneys or couldn't help but notice what was happening in the patient rooms as I was walking by. And doing that for 5 or 6 hours, um, or hearing the prognosis of somebody as I was shadow coaching a particular physician, and then seeing the reaction in the family's eyes when they found out that a loved one was going to probably be passing. I mean, God. And then I came home and my wife would go, "What the heck happened to you?" You just thought, to your point, your energy's so been adaptive to that and you take that on easily. But I, with the help of my wife and others, began to know that if I was coming into a situation where that kind of energy could eventually be absorbed by me, I would start to surround myself in an imaginary bubble of light and
Mm-hmm.
have that practice, that ritual that I'm being surrounded by this light, but I can still be in a great conversation with somebody, be of service, but I wasn't necessarily going to let myself be drawn in and be lowered. My energy needed to stay high, especially in situations like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to
Yeah.
use the kind of the bubble exercise until I actually found out that it didn't work.
Oh,
And that's a
okay.
story for another time. And so, what I talked about in the beginning of our call is like really connecting to the heart and the true essence of who you are. And if you're just in the heart and in that frequency, again, you are not going to be able to take anybody else's energy on because you're staying with you. And that's it. It
Got
sounds so
it.
simple,
No, but
but it's hard.
it's simple and profound. Um, Could I ask you one last question, and then I want to get
Yeah.
to your books and the big thing that you're going to be sharing during your memoir. Um, but what was you mentioned that the physical catalyst for this journey had to do with your lungs? Am I
Mm-hmm.
correct? Right, the
Yeah.
collapsed lungs. If you listen to and you work with Louise L. Hay and her work on
Mm-hmm.
the body, and this, but I'm kind of teeing this up for those who don't, that we often can be taught things by what our body is telling us. Why the lungs? Why was the lung your portal into this journey? Why not your shoulders, your lower back, your earlobes?
Yeah. So, as some of us know, the lungs is the part in our body that holds grief. And I was completely swallowed up in grief by not only my own childhood, but my parents that were, my father was an addict and my mother a schizophrenic, and just like so much of their unprocessed pain, essentially, I was taking on, and my body could not handle the amount of ancestral grief that I was carrying. And
You
so
were breathing it in.
I was breathing it in because I thought that's what my job was. I didn't know as
Yeah.
a child. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Christine, this has been really great. I wish we had another hour. Maybe we should do part two at some
And
point.
do it in person.
And do in person since you're just down the street. Gee whiz, we should do that. So, uh, tell people how they can follow you. The books that you've got, the work that you do. If they want to know more, where do they go?
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty easy on like every platform. I'm Christine Marie Heals. So Instagram.com/Christine Marie Heals, ChristineMarieHeals.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and Substack. I have a space in Portland. It's actually a ceremony space inside of our home that we just bought last year, where we hold healing events and grief rituals and all of that. So if you're in the local Portland area or in Oregon, you can come and be a part of one of our in-person experiences. I also just published a book called Grieve with Guidance in May, and that is available wherever books are sold. And I will be also holding a Grieve with Guidance Sacred Circle virtually starting in November. So if you are someone that has ever had loss or has dealt with loss in any sort of form, and you would need a community for support through that, then you can find all the information on my website.
And you got 2 books out, right?
Yep, and that's Grieve with Guidance. And then the book before that is called Breaking Free, which is all about essentially breaking out of victimhood consciousness and coming into more of my authentic power.
And if it's not too soon, what's the memoir going to be about?
Oh, well, you could say it's how do I put into words? I don't think I have the right words for that yet.
Okay.
It's still in form. Yeah, I'm almost finished with it. Yeah, still being formulated. But you could say it's a lot around essentially my journey into learning how to heal myself through all of the darkness that I inhabited as a child. Yeah.
Yeah, and I so appreciate your courage. That's the thing the word that I am left with, among other things. Aside from the love that you are all about, the word courage is really showing up a lot for me. Just how you've been able to do this. There are those who would give into the darkness, to the abuse, and one would understand why, and you didn't. So that's fantastic. That's just fantastic. So and yeah, thank you for your work. Thanks for bringing some more light to this sometimes dark planet.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean. Pleasure to connect with you, and thank you for everyone listening, and looking forward to connecting however that feels right.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.